So, welcome to today's podcast, where I'm joined by one of the most famous SEOs from back in the day, Kristjan from Iceland. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the Mar Hauksson because I'll probably get it wrong, but it's something like Kristjan Mar Hauksson or Hauksson. How do you pronounce it actually, Kristjan? You can.
Kristjan Mar Hauksson. You were close enough in the last
Close.
one, yeah.
Just you're big. I was going to say, a big Iceland guys you don't want to mess around with because there's strong people. I've still actually got a sore hand, and I tell people this is a genuine story. So obviously, when I was over at your event last year, and I shook your son's hand, my hand still hurts from that handshake he gave. I'm like, fuck, what the hell? So yeah, a strong bunch of guys. But yeah, thank you for coming on. Obviously, you are, and as an experienced SEO as there possibly can be out there. So, how long have you been doing this for?
A long time. But it all it happened kind of relatively accidentally. I studied electronics, and then went to system engineering, so programming and doing stuff, putting together servers and computers, so like more like a grease monkey, like way back. And then I was a part of a community. I think it was the Chamber of Commerce or something like that in Iceland. And somebody said to me, which is quite typical, at least for the day, Kristjan, you are working with computers, aren't you? And I said, yes. Well, what do you think about the internet? And I was like, well, it's brilliant. and I hadn't so much thought about it from that point of view, because I was just putting together computers. And so I was a grease monkey, as you would call it. And then this is 1996, 7, something like that. So I started looking at computers and from a marketing point of view. And I had a eureka moment when I did my first search, and I was probably on Lycos or Yahoo or something like that. And then I also realized that actually being a programmer or actually understanding programming and computers in general actually helped me a lot with the way that you can reverse engineer the algorithm, which at the time, specifically with the early search engines, were quite simple. Then Google enters, and that was a game changer. They came in and did a lot of interesting things, and then the task was to rank on Google. And it was interesting to see the way that Google kind of just took over. You had Alta Vista and Yahoo and these guys, and they were the strong guys on search. But in reality, they were shit. And Google came in, and with their algorithm, even if it was as crude as it was at that time, then it actually just blew everybody out. So yeah, so that's why I just, because I was building computers for people, I became a marketeer.
It's funny you say that, because a lot of people who see that I work on a computer think I actually build and fix computers. So like my father comes to me and says, "Can you fix my computer?" And I'm like, "What? Why come to me?" And he's like, "Nah, you work in computers all day." And I'm like, I don't fix these things. I have no idea.
And still today, people say to me, "You're working something with computers, aren't you?" Like, yes. Yeah, brilliant. And then that's where the conversation ends, actually.
Yeah, I've got friends and stuff as well, and I've tried to explain to them what SEO is and stuff like that. But it's easier to just say I design websites. So again, I've got like hordes of friends who say, "Oh, I've got this mate who wants a website, and I hate websites, and we don't offer them as a service or anything." But yeah, it's difficult one of people understanding what the hell it is we bloody do. But as long as we understand, that's the main thing.
Yeah, and I think the interesting part about this is that I've been trying to, like the conference in Iceland, which he came to, I started that conference basically because I wanted to learn. Initially, this is 2003 or something like that. I wanted to go to New York to go to SES, and didn't get a budget for it where I was working. And then I thought, okay, if I can't go to the mountain, let's bring the mountain to Iceland. So I reached out to Danny Sullivan and asked if he was willing to come to Iceland, and he said yes. And he said, "Can I bring my wife?" And I said, "Of course." And then I asked if like, because at the time there was something called Sembo, which I actually became then a board member of for a while. But there was this woman called Barbara Koll, a web mama or something like that, who was then, and I met a very lovely lady, and I worked with her later. But and I asked if I could get her to come also, and he knew her, and he was going to talk to her and all that. And then something happened to his wife. I think she chopped a finger off or something like that. So Danny couldn't make it. So he pointed me to Chris Sherman, and Chris Sherman, his business partner, actually became a one of the biggest influences in my professional life. We became good friends. He came to Iceland. I think Barbara couldn't make it either, so Shari Thorough came. Also, I don't know if you met her. She's a brilliant lady. Absolutely, yes. She actually is brilliant, and I'll talk to you about that from an SEO point of view. But but then I was offered to go to Stockholm to speak. That was my first kind of gig. That was 2005, I think. And then since then, I've been to what 25 countries, spoken at over 100 conferences in countries like Iran, Nigeria, Ukraine, Serbia. I've had people with weapons escort me between airports and hotels, and it's been absolutely brilliant. It's been a really good experience, and meeting people like you, Greg, and others that you wouldn't have met without the ability to do that. But I think the moral of the story I'm trying to say is that I realized then that if for me to actually make some business in Iceland, which is a country of 300,000 people or 350,000 people, I would have to educate the market.
Yeah.
So that's why the conference actually started. The conference started not because I had a huge ego and which I of course have, but because I wanted to teach the market, because I knew that if I would educate the market, then the market would widen out, and then potentially I would get more business. And people kept saying to me, "Why are you doing this? You're telling all your secrets and you're getting all your contacts." It was never about that. It was actually about educating the market. So
yeah,
that was the reason why. Yeah.
And it still runs to this day. That conference is on again this year.
Yeah, so we are thinking about changing the format a little bit. It's been going on for like 16 years, 17 years, 16 years. Yeah, 16th time then. Yeah, and we are now looking at whether we should change the format a little bit. There's another conference which we have, which is called Cross Media, which is in October, November. September, October, and that is more about design, creativity, and so we're thinking about like how we can mix that together. But yes, no, the conference is going to be, but in what format we haven't decided yet.
As I say, I think I got the opportunity to come out there last year, and I always thought Iceland was just some small little place where no one lived, and there wasn't a lot of business and stuff going on over there. And obviously, when I got to the airport, driving in the taxi, I thought, yeah, I was right. This is like being in the moon. No one stays here. But obviously, then getting to the conference and realizing some of the companies that are based over there, and you've got your Lego and various other people with offices in Iceland, and you realize there's a lot more to Iceland than meets the eye, and a great place. I was unfortunate that my kid wasn't long born, and I had to get off kind of early, so I didn't get to see the Blue Lagoon or the other great stuff that you were showing everyone. But yeah, one day I'm definitely going to come back. Great place if you ever get the chance to go out to the event, anyone listening. And obviously you, for over the years, have had every speaker I know or have spoken with at other conferences always mention your conference, like Judith Lewis or Lucas Selesny. All of these guys are always like, yeah, I've done this, I've done that, I've been there. Amazing place. So it's a great event, and it obviously attracts great speakers as well. So long may that continue.
and that's actually how it. So then it moved. So Chris Sherman came and Shari Thoreau, and then Bill Hunt, and then these guys, and it just spiraled. And for me, it's always been about the experience. I was actually quite sad that you couldn't stay longer, but I understand why. And now I've been watching your kid grow up, and that's the other twist to this. I met with Mikkel de Mip a couple of days back. He was speaking here in Norway at the conference in Lillestrøm, and I met with him. But I've known him for like, I don't know, 10 plus years, and I've been watching his kids grow up. His daughter was just a couple of years old, and now she is a teenager and actually growing up to be a grown-up woman and as clever as her dad and beautiful. So that's what you kind of see these the matureness of the people who are in this industry, and you can kind of be watching the industry grow up, not only through the people that you met at these conferences, but also through the kids. And now you are a part of that. Now I'll be monitoring the kids grow up, and you better do good there. No.
Yeah, so it is good to watch other people doing good things, and as you see, having kids and everything else. And it's a weird industry where, you know, if you worked in any other industry, you probably wouldn't get those opportunities to meet these people or, you know, have the same kind of look on things. So that's certainly an interesting one. But out with you running your conference and everything else, you know, what are you doing on a day-to-day basis these days? Because obviously you've been in this industry for a long time, and you've had agencies. You've still got an agency, to my knowledge, and you've had, you know, I was with Peter van de Graaf last week, and we were just talking about old stories, which I love hearing. You know, about all these guys in the past who done this, that, and the next thing, and he was talking about what you mentioned there, people escorting you around with guns and, you know, Nigerian things and all this kind of stuff. He was telling me all sorts of crazy stories about you. And as I say, I love hearing those stories. But, you know, you've done everything and anything. So where have you landed now? Like, how do you make money these days?
I don't.
Yeah.
No, first, I want to say that anything that Peter van de Graaf says is a lie. I just want to put that on the record here. He should never trust him. There's some good stories that can be told. The only thing I'm just trying to remember now, we've never been to any. Yeah, okay, I'll just leave it at that. What happened? So SEO is something which I still do. I still have some clients with it, and I still love SEO. Is absolutely brilliant, and that ties me into Shari Thoreau, who came to Iceland at the first conference in Reykjavik, into the marketing conference. She actually said something interesting at the time. I was relatively immature as an SEO guy. I was just learning and getting things kind of trying to understand the bigger picture. And she said like that there were three things that needed to be in place, and it was a good site architecture, good content, and a proper technology for the website. Then you have done everything you can from an on-site point of view to get the website done properly, and then what you build out of that is your kind of then anything that happens after that just builds up on top of that. And what I try to do every time when I look at SEO today is that I always try just to look at the fundamentals. We tend to go into kind of all kinds of things like rich snippets or structured data, or I don't know what it is. But the first thing I always look at is technology. And that the technology to me is kind of the silent killer of SEO. We all kind of like, we should do content strategy, we should do this and that. But in reality, if you have a shitty CMS system, or there's something wrong with the way that your website is accepting visits from Google or crawls from Google, that's basically just killing any efforts that you have. So the silent killer in SEO is actually technology and the way that you structure your website. So what she said to me then was that, and this has been interesting, and she's been proven right again and again. it kind of doesn't matter what algorithmical changes Google does, as long as you have a good site architecture and a proper setup of a CMS system, and the technology is sane, and then you have good content on your website, then everything else should just pan out. But if you're doing shitty stuff and you are in the game of burning domains, and you need to get instant visibility because you are in PPC, pills, poker, and casinos, and then of course there are tactics that you just basically do to, and most of them just basically burn the domains within a certain time. So yeah, so I've always used that as I will always just keep it simple. When you look at SEO, look at the simple first stuff. Don't try to complicate it, and in most cases that's actually what fixes things from a simplicity point of view.
Yeah, but again, it's strange you say that. I have a friend, and he problems with the website. It wasn't ranking. He was building links. He was doing everything, and he then hired a few technical consultants to look at why the website wasn't ranking well, and they couldn't come up with anything. They were looking at all these kind of crazy things that he maybe had or hadn't done, and then he came to me. And I said, your website's full of duplicate content. Like, what the fuck? And he's like, no, it can't be that. Can't be that. I said, that is. And he went away and changed it. So he's went through all these consultants who are looking for, something amazingly technical that's super wrong with the website. And I think the fundamentals are very much left, and people don't bother checking them. And I've got a lot of good ones out of rookie mistakes, just basics being done. And I tend to agree. I don't think from my SEO career things have changed that much. Obviously, spamming and everything else is different, but the core fundamentals is obviously having a decent structure to work on, and then having unique content and building everything else out, as organically as you possibly can. Yeah. It's always going to stand the test of time. So I think I'm not one for knowledge graph, and I don't chase all that stuff yet. And I think people obsessed with that stuff. So yeah, tend to agree with that. And as I say, everything else can be panned out if it really is such a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, just keep it simple, and then as you start to see that is not working, then you go into things with more detail, and then. But yeah, so what I realized also. Maybe 7 years ago, something like that, that I was working too tactical. I was working. I was more or less always being told what to do, and so I wanted to try to move myself up in the ladder. Actually, maybe 10 years ago, more than 11 years ago, I was offered to go. To the UK and work with a creative agency there, an advertising agency, and help them. It was a group of agencies, advertising agencies that were being merged together, and I was offered to go out there and kind of teach them the merits of digital marketing. So and this is 2007, 8, 9, something like that. And what I realized then is that the creative part, the strategical part, is actually something which I really want to do. So when I went back to Iceland from the UK, I thought I would want to try to kind of focus on that. And it wasn't until 2013 I was offered to go to Norway and help build up a kind of a digital arm of an advertising agency, and did that for 5 years, and then sold out last year, like a year ago. And since then, I kind of been trying to understand where I want to go next. So kind of, I used the time to reinvent myself a little bit as a professional. But what I did with that was to go from the SEO part and kind of more the tactical part of how to explain this. So the tactical part of things, and more try to be a part of the strategical, kind of lift myself up a little bit up in the hierarchy of decision making, and that actually has worked out quite nicely. It's a little bit tougher to get jobs, of course, and projects. But those projects are actually so much fun because I capitalize a lot from my SEO knowledge. I think SEO is, but some of the most creative people I've ever met are actually SEOs. They just Peter van der Graaf is probably one good example of that, and the Bukkake story is a good example of that. That is actually a creative that's a creative approach, and people like you and others, which I've met with and spoken to, they ooze of creativity, because that's what SEO often is about, is to be a bit creative about the way that you post content, to work with content, get links in, and so on and so on.
Yeah, I think it's the craziest bunch, the craziest bunch of guys I've ever met, and girls, by the way. But obviously, talking about the man Peter van der Graaf, a guy that I've looked up to for a number of years and has great stories. But I'd love to know. Obviously, you've been in the industry a long time, and some of the stories from back then, like the Bukkake story and so on, are some real funny stories. Is the Bukkake story the funniest story you've ever heard, or is there something else?
Well, the Bukkake story, it kind of summarizes for me, in essence, the creativity around SEO. And how you can actually work with content, and how what amazes me again and again is the lack of computer literacy within like just globally, and by that I mean for example, how people look at content. And I think the election of Trump and the way that things were being used to Cambridge Analytica and all that is a really good sample of the way that people are basically being fooled, because they are being fed into the echo chamber, their own echo chamber of beliefs, and that then creates some kind of a cult or a system, and so that is another kind of angle of this, and this of course has a dark side. I know some of the best SEOs I know from the past, they don't work officially yet as SEOs. They basically just work with governments and organizations that are trying to lobby gun rights in the US or whatever. So some of those SEOs they just don't announce themselves as SEOs anymore, because they just are in the dark here somewhere working on things that are not on the table. I can admit that I have done a couple of those projects, and these are great stories, which I will not share here on this. I'm sorry to say that, but I can tell you those in person. But I think the Bukkake story is kind of in essence the creative power that SEOs have, because you have to think about that. I think Lisa, she was Myers, but now she is Lisa's John Myers' ex. Lisa. Yeah. Oh, I can't remember last name. Sorry, Lisa. I can't remember. They did some brilliant stuff from a link building point of view, where you kind of create a really nice set of content and then kind of build that as a bait to get people to link, and they were getting some nice valuable links from the likes of BPC and so on, just because of the value, and that is creativity also. That's the way that you build up topics. What are people likely to do, and what are people likely to link to, and how will they accept the stuff we're sending? So there's a lot of things, both, let's say, gray hat and then white hat, that you can do to, and then of course there's stuff which is dark black hat.
Yeah. The good stuff. For anyone who is listening, I'm going to have Peter van der Graaf on in a few weeks' time, and he can explain exactly the Bukkake story, because every time I hear the Bukkake story, certain bits of it change and stuff. But we will let him tell the full story of that and what was involved. But yeah, I think that the Bukkake story for me is just one of the funniest, just because it's crazy. But I think out of all the kind of guys, I think it's all you older school guys like yourself, Peter van de Graaf, and you've got Jason Duke and all these kind of other guys. And I think it would be safe to say that some of the stories can never be said on here. But if you ever do get a chance to meet these guys and hear the stories and some of the stunts they've pulled, then it's certainly worth buying these guys a few beers. And I'm just thinking about some other Peter van de Graaf stuff, because we were in Holland last week at Black Hat Conference. So Peter, for anyone who doesn't know, has kind of been in the darkness for the last 5 years, hiding behind this agency, not doing any talking, not doing anything. But for anyone who thinks this guy's dead and forgets about SEO, he's very much still up to his old tricks. And yeah, so Kristjan, he's still doing some crazy stuff. He's not by any stretch trying to come clean and change into a white hat SEO. He's still up to no good, but he has promised to come on. Other guys,
there are a couple of people out there that you should talk to, and we can take that offline. There are actually a couple of people that have gone straight, who have decent agencies and have done a lot of stuff. And there's a lot of interesting people out there, like Jost, for example, is a really good sample of he started doing SEO quite young, and he then makes this plugin, the Yoast SEO plugin, and that plugin basically is probably on more websites than any other plugin. So when there are problems, Google actually calls him to see if things have rolled out properly. So there are people out there you should definitely talk to, and there are more. But I think maybe just to kind of draw a line or put a dot behind the Bukkake story is that when Peter van de Graaf was in Iceland, we had this thing called the Dark Session, and it was Phantom Meister, it was Mikkel de Mip, I think, Peter van de Graaf. Yeah, we called it the Dark Session or something like that. And he told the story, and Paul Madden, I don't know if you know him. Paul Madden. Yeah. Was in the room, and he actually had brought his kid with him, was 10-year-old, something like that at the time. And they were sitting in the room, and Peter was going off with the story, and then they realized that there was a kid in the room, and Paul was like holding, preventing the kid from hearing because it was so graphical, the story. So and there was a panic in the room, like, what should we do? And I was like holding back, and it was, but it ended up being fine, and it's a good story, and the main thing is whether it's true or not. It is a really good story of why I actually love the SEO part of what I do, and I keep doing it still, though it's not as much as I used to, and I just take projects just to kind of maintain my knowledge. Is the creative part of it. I really like that. I like the solution thinking, the solution oriented thinking of having to reverse engineer algorithms and try to understand what impacts what and so on.
By the way, on that, that story was true. Last week, he actually had slides with screenshots of the documentation and everything for that doctor, that doctor guy, the Indian dude.
Yeah.
So,
but you take that up with him. It's a great story, and he will tell you that.
Yeah. So going, obviously, you've came the full circle where you've started out and you've done all these kind of, tactics and everything else. Do you think there's still a place for that type of stuff in this day and age? Is that stuff still working as well as, we've mentioned that the basics of SEO, you still have to look at that stuff, but do you still feel there's still a place for that kind of thing that, Peter van de Graaf and all that kind of stuff do on a regular basis?
Yes, that would be the short answer. I think SEO is still today one of the most undervalued marketing efforts that companies can do. And the big challenge with SEO is that if you look at the marketing department, they are being measured on quarters. So, for example, a marketing department might have a budget for the whole year, and then they do a plan for the impact of their marketing budget. And because they are being measured by quarters or by every year, SEO, because of the patience that has to be put into that to actually reach a proper SEO results, you have to be patient, and you have to like do things incrementally. You have to understand the changes that are happening, and so the value of SEO is not as instant, or not as it's actually not instant. While pay-per-click or programmatic or whatever it is has more instant gratification to it, so we start an AdWords campaign and we kind of see results from it right away.
Yeah,
we tweak the campaign, of course, but we see results from it. SEO has a much longer tail, which means that if a company is being measured, or a marketing department is being measured by the results of a quarter or a year, they will always fail at SEO because the patience isn't there. The companies that actually get SEO are the companies that have, most of the time, are digital natives, like companies that have been born online, that have been like Zalando or Momondo, or these companies. These are the companies which kind of get it more than most others, because that they are born online, and they are natives to the environment.
yeah,
And so those are the companies that normally get it. So the companies that don't get it, they actually fail at it because they're not patient enough, and they don't allocate the resources that are needed. But SEO is, in my mind, one of the, or if not the most undervalued effort that a company can do from a marketing point of view.
yeah. One final question I've got for you, Kristjan, and this is just a personal opinion of mine. Obviously, I think from me looking at you, I think you've always came across as a professional businessman. Not dodgy in any way. And I'm not saying you are dodgy, but I think there's obviously the fine line where you go down the black hat route, the white hat route, and I think from a personal point of view, watching you over the years, you've kind of remained somewhere in the middle. Was that something that was a deliberate choice, or do you not care what side of the fence other people see you being on? Because loads of people, like, at the end of the day, I don't like the whole white hat, black hat argument, because we're all just trying to manipulate the same thing anyway. But you've always kind of remained, and I know you love the stories about the Peter van de Graaf stuff and all that kind of stuff, but you've always kind of remained in the middle. Would you say that would be a fair assessment of where you've been over the years, or do you happily tell people you do all this other crazy stuff?
Yeah, no, okay. So my way of viewing things is that if I don't think I can talk proudly about it in 10 years' time, I won't do it.
Mm-hmm.
You might say that I've done something which could be considered gray hat. I have done projects which are actually more of an experiment to me than anything else. I couldn't say no just because the opportunity came about. Yeah, interestingly enough, actually, that's a project which I was going to hand over to Peter van de Graaf, but he couldn't take it, so I took it. But the thing here is that any of us as human beings, probably we don't necessarily have to have the gratitude of everybody, or everybody has to look at us in a certain way. But like from my personal point of view, if the project to me looks like something which I won't be proud of in 10 years time or 15 years time, if history won't tell me that this is something that I shouldn't have done or should have done, then I will walk away from it. And I try to take projects that I can reflect positively on later on. And to that point, some projects which I take are projects which I take just for the curiosity of it. You probably, if you would meet my wife, she probably will tell you that I forget to invoice a lot of the projects I do. And it's basically because I love this so much that sometimes there are projects out there that just they capture me. They captivate me in a way that I just want to see how it pans out.
Yeah.
And so whether I get paid for it or not is not always the main thing. Though I have actually grown wiser towards that as I grow older.
Yeah. Yeah. So don't anyone listening, don't shoot Kristjan up. I'm looking for some free work.
No, but here's the thing is that anybody doing SEO out there, like, understand this. The value of your work is tremendous. Understand that you have to manage expectation from an impact point of view. You do not control all the situation. You don't control the algorithms, for example. But as long as you manage expectations and you have a certain way of doing things, you should be fine. And also, like, invoice for your work. It's so important. Get money.
Yeah, it's why we're all here. And I know a lot of guys who, in this industry in particular, who are very lazy about their invoicing. So it's good advice. We love SEO and tools and software and testing and everything else. And sometimes it's easy to get lost in the work rather than the core reason why you're doing it, which is to make money. So, yeah, sadly though, we are out of time, Kristjan. But for anyone who may be looking at you or trying to reach out to you, what can you help people with in today's climate? Can you help with consultancy, training? What would someone come to you for? What are you open to giving back?
My baby my baby now is to build marketing automation systems. I really like that. I'm building been building those for the past year or two, and so building systems where marketing and also automation happens, and lead nurturing. SEO plays a major role there, and content, but AdWords, Facebook, and all that stuff also. And then using tools like Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever that is, Market or whatever that's out there, on top of everything else. And then I've been building my own solution around a specific type of analytics, business to business analytics, which I have been developing. And so yeah, so that has my attention now. But basically, if I'm always happy to help, and if there's anybody out there that needs a thing they can use my talent, the first cup of coffee is always free, and I don't even drink coffee, so you can imagine how cheap that is.
So the best place to get a hold of you, what's the best email address, or is it Facebook, or where's the best place to catch?
So I am the only Kristjan Mar Hauksson in the world. So if you Google me, you'll just find me. It's actually easy to optimize for that. I just remember now my most funny story about SEO. I was on the board of directors for Sembo. It was Mike Ryan, Motoko Hunt, and a couple of other people. We were in Arizona, in Phoenix, I think, and we were doing a little bit. Had been drinking a little bit, and it was fun. Nothing crazy, but we just sat side by side. We were doing pop quiz, and Motoko Hunt is probably the wisest person I've ever met about rock and roll music and music in general. She basically knew everything. Second to her, it would be Mike Ryan. He also is a Wikipedia of music quizzes. But we made a bet. Me and Mike, or not a bet, but it was a kind of a dare. And I told Mike that I could make his name rank for a sound cricket. Yeah, that was the word, because there was these crickets in the trees making these noises, and we were thinking that the noises were made by little crickets that actually had this purpose to make sounds. So they were sound engineer crickets, and I told him that I could make him rank within 10 minutes for that. and I did that in 7.5 minutes. And we still talk about it. And then I took it out, so you can't Google it now because
it's long gone.
It's gone again. But it basically, and the moral of the story was that then when you is that there's so many great stories out there of just testing things and realizing that Google is not all holy, and it's just an algorithm that if you're able to reverse it, then you know what it's about.
Yeah. As I say, I love the story side of it. Love sharing beers with people, and hopefully we'll share a beer somewhere sometime soon as well, in the near future. But what I will do is put your social media links and stuff, because I normally roll this out as a blog as well. So for anyone that wants to get in touch with Kristjan, I will have his contact details below. But as he says, Kristjan Mar Hauksson, he's the only one of these guys.
I'm the only one in the world.
But yeah, no, thank you, Kristjan, for taking the time to come on and talk and share some of your tips and experience and stories with us, and catch you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Greg.